Presidency. I'm joined by Dr. Suresh Goyal, former diplomat. Also with me, Tara Karta of the National Security Council Secretariat. Thanks so much to the both of you for joining us on the broadcast. Tara Karta, first to you. How do you think India's G20 presidency has fared so far? What have been the achievements and takeaways? And as I mentioned, many would say that it's a rotational presidency. Every member nation gets it once. But how has India's presidency, in your opinion, has been an outlier?
Oh, sorry. I think for one, we've raised the fact of the people-friendly approach, which the Prime Minister has been stressing. And all of us know, even as Chief Minister, this is the Prime Minister's style. Yeah. He doesn't like things being kept inside, exclusive elite corridors. He likes it going out. And, the point here, is that to get many of these initiatives going, you need the people on board. It's not enough to, for example, even if you take the marine plastic pollution, the group which was formed where you had this massive, I think it was 30 beaches in India which was cleaned up by people coming, 14,000 people involved, 20 beaches outside the country also involved. This is on a huge scale. And you cannot, this is not just about PR. You cannot tackle the single plastic, the single-use plastics, for example, unless you get the people on board. You look at the chairman's summary in that aspect. What it says is, there are clearly, what I'm trying to say is there are limits where governments will go. If you try to get everybody across on one table and say, okay, let's end plastic, it's not going to happen. You have to get people on board. And that is what this particular G20 has done.
That's a very important point you're making, Tara Karta, that the government has in a sense been instrumental in building consensus globally and geopolitically. So Dr. Suresh Goyal, as a former diplomat yourself, how do you think that has fared? Because it's been, a tightrope walk indeed, given the fact that, the government has, of course, the America focus is very much there as far as India's G20 presidency is concerned. But, India has also stressed on the global south and, the needs of the global south as, emerged as a voice of the global south. How important has that been? India's emergence as a voice of the global south, and how has that tightrope walk been diplomatically?
You see, 1 year ago, when we became the president of G20, I think the biggest challenge before us, and I'm talking more in sense of really a foreign policy outcome that we wanted, or what do we hope to achieve from G20, it's quite all right to say that yes, it's a rotational presidency, and we should have become president last year, but we decided to change it to this year, etc., etc. Now, given the kind of a situation that we are in, and look at the challenges that we had, Russia-Ukraine war, clearly no outcome document would have included a paragraph satisfactory to all the government. Big challenge. Bali Declaration actually could not agree on Ukraine. China coming in. Now, seeing all these challenges, I think we had to really see what kind of a legacy we want to leave behind in G20 to make it look purposeful and look meaningful, really. And I think in that sense, the idea to make it global south, human-centric, a purpose to basically connect people for today and tomorrow to come to a common development and growth theme. I think that was a master stroke. And therefore, when you choose a theme, one earth, one family, one future, you are bringing people together on the same earth to seek a common direction from G20, which is a grouping of all the developed countries and several developing big economies, therefore having a considerable decision-making power in their hand.
And Dr. Suresh Goyal, as you mentioned, there are many challenges as well, given the fact that India's G20 presidency comes at a challenging time globally. Of course, the Russia-Ukraine war is something that's cast a shadow, as you said, on many declarations earlier. And, many parts of the world still recovering from the impact of the pandemic. So, Tara Karta, what are going to be the challenges to the joint communique? Because that is something that is being very closely watched. Do you think Ukraine is going to be a very important issue, something that perhaps could be an insurmountable challenge to that joint communique?
Yeah, Ukraine is going to be a problem. There's no two ways on that. I mean, the very fact that, in all the chairmen, there's not a single outcome document from any of the, not outcome document, joint statement from any of the workshops which we held so far, the ministerial meetings, not one. But the thing is that what you said, I think it's a very important point, is, sorry, 1 second, is that, the fact that you've been able to take the African Union on board, you've bolstered your position on major issues by saying this is part of the global south, which it is. The issues which are of importance to us, which is energy, in terms of food security, in terms of climate change, these are things which are very fundamental to our future, and this is where the global south comes in. So
absolutely.
That is a master stroke. It is a master stroke saying it's not just us, we are talking for everybody else. And you had the largest conference, online conference, I think, ever, with 125 countries in the global south.
So a larger global good is what
Exactly.
India is really, in a sense, concentrating on. Of course, climate change is a big focus. Sustainable development, sustainable growth is a big focus. Energy is a big focus. And India really has sort of championed these causes, not just for itself, but for, as you said, the global south. Dr. Suresh Goyal, what are going to be the focus areas, not just in as far as the Heads of State Summit is concerned, but also, in these key bilaterals? Of course, crypto has emerged as an important priority as well. What do you think is going to be the key message? If I had to pin you down and, ask you to give me 3 important priority areas, what would they be?
I will not talk about bilaterals because they would be different in different cases.
Yes.
But coming to the G20 itself, I think the major issues are going to be really on which there is possibility of really coming together: climate, public digital goods or public digital infrastructure, that will be key, climate and connectivity.
Okay.
Connectivity, both including supply chains, global supply chains, and connectivity of cultures and people. 3.
Absolutely. And Ms. Kartha, another important point is that India's G20 presidency is not just limited to the G20 process in a sense, because it has larger global ramifications. Of course, India's emergence in a sense as a possible global power. What do you think that, how important is that? Because India really is now pitching for what it calls the India way. So how much of that do you see happening after India's G20 presidency?
Yeah, that's an important point, because which is why whether or not a joint communique comes through is not really a point, because we've stood our ground on what we believe in. On Ukraine, we've stood our ground, and we are saying, yes, there should be an end to war. This is not an era for war, but we are backing our position and that of the global south, which has really been terribly affected by the war. So that is one. We are sort of positioning ourselves much above all of this to say that we are a voice beyond the global with G20. I mean, you just saw the Jakarta meeting.
Absolutely.
Where the PM said that, we should have unity in terms of international
law. So
law.
India, of course, pitching for, an India way, as we have been talking about. So India's G20 presidency has, of course, been an outlier in more ways than one. Thanks so much to both of you for joining us on the broadcast.